The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to Reproaction's second session in our direct action training series. In the first session, we chatted about intersectionality, what that means, why it's important, sort of providing that theoretical base for the work. And this is the first session where we're getting into the practical what to do's of it all and what that can look like. So things I want you to know up top. I want you to know that. Well, first, I want to thank y'all for showing up, right? Hopefully, y'all are comfortable somewhere, some food, some hot tea, something to drink or eat as you tune in, and that you can post your questions in the chat throughout. You can also hold on just 1 second, y'all. Let me get this in like the proper mode. There we go. You can post your questions in the chat throughout the presentation. We will leave time for Q&A at the end, but anytime you have a question, post it. I'm keeping an eye on it so I can see the questions as they come in when you have them. And if it's something that I can hit and touch on like really quickly, I'll incorporate it into, or will incorporate it into the presentation. But if it's something that I think is important for us to wait to the end to get to, then I'll do that. I do want you all to keep in mind that this is an overview, so you won't be an expert at the end of this, right? Keep that in mind. But and also another thing that I'll let you know is that this could be taught so many different ways. We're teaching this based on our experience and within the time restraints that we have, right? This is 60 minutes. I'm not gonna lie to you, I've never done this training in 60 minutes, but I'm ambitious today. We're gonna do it. Usually I do these in person, and in person, you have more leeway, more time, it's more personable, but no one wants to sit on their computer staring at their screen for more than an hour at a time, at least not me. So I had that in mind. I was gonna make this longer, and I was like, no, it's unreasonable. So we'll go ahead and get started. Y'all know, if you don't know, that Reproaction is a reproductive justice organization. Our mission is to increase access to abortion and advance reproductive justice. And we do that in a variety of ways, mostly research and through direct action. So you came to the right place, right? I'm going to start off with introductions of your presenters today. First is the voice you're hearing right now, Ivania Woods. I am the Movement Building and Research Manager at Reproaction. I've spent the last 5 years employing principles of intersectionality as a reproductive justice organizer and movement builder with Reproaction, where I've worked on increasing birth control and abortion access, addressing racial health disparities, and ending HIV criminalization. And I've done some other things which you could read on your own if you want as a part of my job with Reproaction, specifically within my community. I'm based out of Columbia, Missouri, and that is halfway between Kansas City and St. Louis. So we call this region Mid-Missouri. So in Mid-Mo, I am here, and a lot of my movement building and organizing has been here in Missouri. And so I'll turn it over to your other presenter today.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me, Eva. My name is Shireen Shakori. I am Deputy Director at Reproaction, where Eva and I work together. You can read my bio if you like, but mainly the wave top is that I have worked in repro movement building and organizing, as well as a lot of local DC activism projects. So my what I'm bringing to this and what the background I come from is both looking at national level organizing on issue-based topics, as well as lobby and non-lobbying projects that are hyperlocal, just respective to my city. So yeah, this should be a great discussion, and looking forward to digging in more.
Thank you so much, Shireen. If my computer will allow it, right? All right, so today's objectives. We're going to review the following: recruitment and mobilization, relationship building, and coalition building. I do want to note that, again, just emphasizing, if I was teaching this in a different setting or on a different day, or if someone else was teaching this, it may look different. Like, this isn't meant to be like a end all be all. This is what everyone's building your base presentation would look like. So keep that in mind, but hopefully you find some really helpful things. I tried to do it in a way where it isn't like giving you exactly what you might expect it to be, but keeping in tune with that. So again, if you have questions, just post them in the chat. So our first topic is recruitment and mobilization. So Shireen.
Sorry, I'll be on camera here in a moment. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I am going to open up with the idea of recruitment, and there's a couple different panels for which you can do that. First is obviously, like, it's great if folks are already seeking you or your org out. They learn about you, they want to learn more and get involved and engaged, and giving potential volunteers like a one-stop shop to plug in takes a lot of the stress off them. You want people to have like a clean on-ramp to this work, especially if they're newer to social movement work. So it also really helps to vet folks if your work has higher security concerns potentially, like Repro definitely does these days. You want a volunteer application to be thorough enough that you can like get a picture of a person and know what they're about, and get like info to reach back out to them, of course, but it's not enough that submitting an application is going to be like a project, which, you know, could dissuade people. So it's definitely a fine line. Then looking at sign-up sheets at actions or events, having like column categories, and, you know, people don't just give their name and email, but like different checkboxes of how, when, and if they want to engage with you. So, you know, some people may just want to sign up for emails, and that's okay. Others might want to be at every action, and honestly, this is true for an online form as well. But if you're recruiting folks at an action or an existing event, whether it's for you or another group, you kind of already have them at a baseline of engagement. So you can guide folks to take the next step with you from there. And then while you're out and about, in Repro at least, there is absolutely no shortage of super cute pro-abortion shirts, and particularly shorts and other apparel or merch that you can buy for abortion fundraisers every year. And like for me, I have a majority of my casual and workout clothes are from abortion fund t-shirt sales. So whenever I wear them, I get compliments. And from there, I'll often use that to kind of move the conversation further to, oh, this shirt is from X Abortion Fund. If you want to get more involved, like, here's how, or get more involved in our org, whether it's my day job or fund work or anything else. Like, people are usually receptive to that. Obviously, there's other ways to get the conversation moving when you're out and about, but that's a really nice way to like get folks to come to you and know that at a baseline they're down with what you're working on. And like all of the different levers of recruitment require some follow-up, you know, maybe a phone call, text, emails, virtual or in-person one-on-ones with the folks that you're recruiting. And that's not, some people view it as like a peer pressure thing, but knowing someone's participation is important to you and to our cause is really how you get them to continue moving for the next step. So we're at the next slide. You have conversing with folks about their interests and skills. Everyone has a role, and no role is too small. Some folks just aren't doing their best work out in the streets, especially since, you know, COVID-19 struck our communities. There's definitely a greater need for digital and other back-end roles that are supporting organizing and movement building. and meeting people where they're at and letting them know that, no matter their ability or their capacity for engagement, there's a way that they can get involved and make a difference. And then putting them to work, obviously, like giving people roles that they feel like they can confidently execute does a huge job to boost their confidence and to make them feel like they are actively participating and not just, getting tasks meted out to them. I think we can move to the next slide. So the next is on getting folks to recognize and build on their skills, and then like honing those skills. Don't be afraid to like change or iterate or like just guide people through that. Some folks may start with simply flyering or something else kind of low impact, printing items out for an action. And then they decide they want to have a more active role in action planning, or, vice versa. If you give folks tasks to hone their talents, but not be afraid to provide feedback, a lot of leadership in movement work really only requires empathy and humanity. So just like check in where individuals are at along the way, see where they're getting their confidence in the work, for where they might seem more anxious or self-conscious or struggling, and then propel them to the best next step. It's not always linear, but you can sustain active partnerships and engagement in your movement circles by being flexible and letting the work be driven by people's talents more than by what on the outside might look like what they're supposed to be doing, or what you as an organization or group are supposed to be doing. And if you can direct folks to training or set up coaching sessions for feedback, that's even better. You're more likely to have a sustained engagement from folks who feel like their talents are being invested in, not just used. And the same goes for decision making. Like, of course, this likely isn't going to happen right away with folks who are super green or just super new to your org, but someone who has shown loyalty to the mission and the outcomes, and to like your vision for achieving those outcomes has more than earned a seat at the table where decisions are made. And this is a great opportunity to compile a diverse group to provide perspectives on different tactics that you may come up with that might not have been how the work presented itself from the earliest recruits of your work or like your earliest planning. And then possibly most important is just building relationships and community outside of the work, but also like along with the work. So don't just like come to people when you need them for something. Invest in their whole selves and they will do so with you. And that's just like a beautiful and infinitely rewarding part of building movement with people. Like you are also creating and sustaining personal relationships and building trust that can carry over into a lot of aspects of your life beyond the goals you're trying to achieve and the things you're trying to change or make better. So like create space for fun. It just really pays dividends, especially when the work is really tough and the goals are lofty. The goal we have talked about throughout this whole presentation is preventing burnout and disenchantment with collective action, and like finding time to bond with the people you're doing this work with is really one of the major through lines in how to prevent that burnout and disengagement. And I think that's all I got. I will kick it over to Eva.
All right, thanks so much, Shireen. All right, so I'll dig into relationship building. So with relationship building, we're talking about this in terms of individuals, regardless of your group or your organizational affiliation or your level of contribution to movement work, right? So those are all different things. And ultimately, it's really just for you to think more critically about creating, building community, and like Shireen was talking about, like not just having those exchange relationships where they're transactional, where you're only hitting up people when you need something, or they're only hitting up you when they need something. So in movement building or in building your base for the type of people that you want in the movement, in your organization, or if you're the person who's looking for to get involved, more involved with movements, or looking to get involved with an organization. So these are good tips either way, right? It has to start with building and strengthening personal relationships in your community, in your state, and even extending out to the national level, but it starts at home, right? So the first piece of advice I would give is that you begin with people and org leaders who share your views. Now, these are people who are as progressive or maybe as conservative as you are. Like, they agree with you on how things should be, what they should look like, what it's going to take to get those things that you want. So that is the easiest starting point because you don't have to argue or fight about your stance with anyone. You're not having to convince people that this is the way it should be. And you see a lot of this in movement work where relationships will start in terms of likeness, right? And similarities, familiarity. And then you can form partnerships and stand in solidarity with each other. So here is the point where you're getting to know these people, you're forming these relationships, and now you're able to work in partnership with other groups, other organizations, and you're able to stand in solidarity with each other. And what I mean there is an extension beyond support, right? So you can support people's work in a variety of ways, but it may not require you to be as involved. This is more of an involved relationship that you're forming so that you're not only helping to advertise for other people's events, you're showing up, they're showing up for yours, you're co-sponsoring events, you're working on that stuff together. And it here at this point, it doesn't mean it's at an organizational or a group level. It could just be 2 or 3 of you who are community leaders or stepping into being community leaders who are coming together to work on things that you are in agreement with and that, that you share views and the goals are this, your goals are the same and your outcomes that you're seeking are the same. And hopefully you get to move beyond professional models that limit human interaction and responsibility. And what I mean by this is like when you're relationship building, you're community building, you're trying to learn from people who are most directly affected by issues and forming those relationships and creating leaders, finding out who are the leaders in your community, who are the people who could be leaders in your community, and really figuring out where your position is in the community, right? And so you do that by meeting people, talking to them, and chatting it up, but also engaging around issues together. And then last but certainly not least, you can seek out relationships with people and org leaders who share your goals. Now, there is a difference between sharing your views and sharing your goals. So sharing your views, like I said, is you both think abortion should be safe and accessible and legal. You think water should be clean and people should have access to that. People should have health care. Like, you agree on those points. Sharing the same goals does not mean you share the same views. That means that you can come together and work on an issue that you agree on, but you may not share the same views. And an example I'll give of that is from one of the books that I'll suggest later at the end of this training is Native Americans or indigenous people who are fighting for environmental justice issues, for instance, clean water, and then fishermen who may be racist and not even like indigenous people or feel like they should exist on a particular plot of land that they exist on, but they both have a vested interest in the water being clean because the fishermen need fish for their livelihood. And so they can come together to work on that issue. And so it takes honing that skill and time and willingness on both or all sides to get there. That's a little bit more difficult to do, but through relationship building, you can do it eventually. You'll get there. All right. So next we want to talk about, oh wait, let me go back. I want to add just one more thing to that, right? So the homework for people, like if you're wondering, like, how do you get started with relationship building? What does that look like? Here, this is a good homework assignment for you. Make a list of community leaders and categorize them into these two groups. One, who you want to get to know. Those are the people who you don't know. Maybe you've heard of them. Maybe you've seen them at actions, but you're just not sure. They could be staff at an organization. They could just be people in the community that you notice show up sometimes, or maybe a person of interest that you're just like, I wonder what their deal is or what they like or what they're into. And then the second group is who you want to get to know better, right? So these are the people who you already know, but or think you know or you know of, like you've had conversations with them before, but nothing really too in depth, right? Like you can say that you know who they are, but you maybe never had a conversation with them. So after you figure out the people that you want to dig into like more conversation, deeper relationships with, then you can reach out to them and see about scheduling a meetup. And that meetup could look like drinks and not necessarily alcoholic, but tea, coffee. It could look like grabbing lunch. It could also look like grabbing dinner, meeting up at a park, sitting on a bench, or going for a walk together just to chat, whatever you want to do in an environment that's conducive to having conversation, to get to know each other better and figure out how you can better support each other's work, or or how you could be more involved in whatever it is that they're doing. Like that's what it takes to build community. So in coalition building, this portion is more so for group and organization leaders. It's more so about like movement building and making movements intersectional or increasing the intersectional elements of the movement that you're already a part of that's has that agenda set already. So with coalition building, you can think of it similar to relationship building, but think of it on a larger level. So it's with groups and organizations. And in this capacity, it's more so like a professional capacity, or if you're with an org, but if you are with a group, you can also think of that as a professional capacity. You're just not getting paid for it, right? And relationship building on that level could look like, I know like here in Columbia, it looks like in our community, we have a mutual aid fund that I contribute to. Other people can, because Columbia is like a little speck of blue in Missouri. There's like Kansas City, St. Louis, and then Columbia is the other speck of blue. The rest of the state is red. And so here it's quote unquote progressive, mostly for the most part. And what you end up with are a lot of this, not official organizations, but groups that will start and maybe grow. And I think about the Mutual Aid Fund. There's a quote unquote progressive, I don't say quote unquote, it is like a progressive gun club where it's not about, oh, they're coming to take our guns. It's about knowing gun safety and knowing if you come across a loaded weapon, how do you make that weapon, how do you like, I was going to say unloaded, but that isn't right. How do you like make sure that you get the bullets out, right? And out of the chamber and not just the clip. And, how do you lock the guns up and make sure that they are safe? And if you want to learn how to use guns, you can also learn how to do that too. There's all kinds of things that they do. And then there's also a group that started because of the houseless, the unhoused population continues to grow here in Colombia, and like trying to come up with solutions and combating that capitalistic element and figuring out how we can all work together to get what we want and help people in our community who need help. And so it's a really beautiful thing to see people relationship building in that way. So in coalition building as well, you want to be intentional about working across movements. Now that looks like the reproductive justice movement, linking up with environmental justice, economic justice, climate justice, all of these organizational leaders trying to figure out, of course, there's that relationship building element, but in coalition building, it's on the record officially, like our groups and organizations are working together on issues. And so that brings me to the way that you can work together on issues, being coalition within a coalition. You can form a coalition and work within a coalition, or you can form a collaborative and work within a collaborative. And granted, this is at an official capacity. So given in this binary, I don't want you to think these are the only two ways to do it. There's variations of these that you can do that aren't on an official capacity, where you don't have a logo and you're not stamping it on things. You're not calling yourself a coalition or calling yourself a collaborative, but you work with that interest and, with those thoughts in mind. So with the coalition, that is when you form an alliance across organizations or with organizations on a single issue. Like you've all decided this one thing is important. We should all be working on it. We're going to come up with our points. We're going to come up with how we want to educate people and raise awareness, how we want to not only just posit the issue, but also think about how we want to address it. And what that looks like in the wrong one, how we can accomplish our goal. And the goal is usually something concrete, something that can be like measurably accomplished. And then a collaborative doesn't come together for a specific issue, but notes that we are all progressive organizations working on a variety of issues in a variety of different ways, but we can support each other in very key ways and work together. So in this way, you can have organizations, also organizations across movements from, environmental and economic and reproductive working together, but you all aren't working on one issue. It's a variety of issues, and you're figuring out how you can best be working in solidarity with each other. So you have meetings like, what are you working on? What's coming up? What are you doing out here? Oh, we can help with that. I can send a couple of my staff over to help with this project or that project, help you get signatures on this, or, pull off this event. And that can also be useful. So it really just depends on how long you want the relationship to work, what you have a capacity for, because ideally you want to get to the point where you can work in coalition or collaboratively, but you really have to be serious about your capacity and what your organization or your group's capacity, because it does require extra time and energy that funders don't necessarily fund or tend to when they are thinking about deadlines and timelines for the funding that they give you to accomplish whatever it is that you've set to accomplish in that timeline. So that is all I have for you. Want to thank Shireen for co-presenting this with me. I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions because we were giving such a broad overview that I wanted to make sure that attendees had time to get in the questions that they wanted specifically and what you want to get out of this. So if there was something that wasn't covered, something that you want to get out of this specifically, feel free to hit up the chat box and submit your questions. So you can follow Reproaction on all of our social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Reproaction. You can email us at reproaction@reproaction.org. You can also visit our website, reproaction.org. which where you registered for this training on that resource page. You can go and register for the next two. You can also find resources for all sorts of things. We have the anti-fake clinic database. We have the bad faith medicine information on that, self-managed abortion with pills information on that, our maternal and infant mortality campaign information on that. And honestly, there's an abundance of information there. We're an education fund, so our purpose is to educate people. If you can also go to our YouTube, which I forgot to mention that we do have. The trainings are recorded. They will be posted on the same page that you registered on. The videos that are plugged in are from our YouTube. So if you ever want to go to YouTube and peruse through that entity and see exactly like what other trainings and things that we've done, and you don't want to go through the website and itemize it that way, feel free to do that. It is also at Reproaction. So that wraps us up for this training. I did want to give some reading suggestions, so we'll do that before we hop into questions. So the reading suggestions that I have for you, and here's the thing. Always know that the work that we're doing is continuous. It's ongoing. It never ends. Education is continuous. If you ever come across someone who pretends that they know everything, knows it all, if you ever come across someone, be wary of them, right? It doesn't matter how long you do this work, there's always things to learn. Whenever we're creating solutions, we're creating more problems that are also going to need solutions. That's why increasing inclusion is so important in this movement, why relationship building so important, why coalition building so important, recruitment and mobilization being so important. All right. All right. So my reading suggestions, and these are primarily on working in coalition with other organizations. So they get into relationship building, coalition building. If you want to read more about recruitment and mobilization, I was looking through my sources and realized the bulk of the sources I have on that are behind paywalls. So I did study movements in grad school, and so a lot of the information I have on that came from peer-reviewed journals. So apologies for that. But if I did also do a quick search on Google last night, and there's plenty of books that are available and accessible that you can find on recruitment and mobilization and coalition building. But these are just my suggestions for you. The first one, fair warning, it's very difficult to get through, but it is a key piece of literature that I've returned to many times. The reason why it's difficult to get through is because it was not originally written in English. And if you've ever read anything translated from another language into English, you know whoever's doing the translating are using words and are sequencing them in ways that we don't necessarily speak or conversationally or write if you speak English and write in English. So it always gets a little convoluted in that way. But Ernesto Laclau and Chantel Muth, and don't know if I'm pronouncing those names right, but they published a book in 1985 called Hegemony and Socialist Strategy, Towards a Radical Democratic Politics. Pretty old book, but a lot of the books that you are going to read that were published since then, cite them, all of them, cite them. It's a core key piece. And honestly, if you wanted to get to the nitty gritty, just go to the last chapter. That's my recommendation for most books. The outline is in the last chapter. Most of the book is theoretical and it's theory, but the practical components of it are in the last chapter. And if you can get through that and make sense of that, kudos to you. But some easier reads for you, go to suggest Andrea Smith's, published in 2008. It's called Native Americans and the Christian Right, the Gendered Politics of Unlikely Alliances. So Native Americans and the Christian Right. Just a little caveat about Andrea Smith. She is super problematic, claiming to be indigenous when she was not, and building her career off of that. And I believe she claimed to be Cherokee, and they have asked her multiple times to discontinue that. So I entered that as a caveat, as just so you know, FYI. Not vouching for her as a person, but the research is solid. And the third suggestion is Nella Van Dyke and Holly J. McCammon. They're the editors of a book published in 2010 called Strategic Alliances, Coalition Building and Social Movement. There's so many gems in there, like hardcore, absolutely love it. Took so many notes. It's like probably the book I have with the most posted notes, highlights, and whatnot in them. But it's super practical, and it's an edited version. So there's different authors for different chapters, and you really get that on the ground. This is coming out of our movement experience, and it's not theoretical in the sense that it's like people with PhDs chatting with other people with PhDs. It's movement, activists, people writing. And so those are my 3 reading suggestions for this training session. All right, so Shireen, did you have anything you wanted to add before we get into questions?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. No, I really appreciate your reading suggestions, and I think that, yeah, underscores that like people are writing whole books and doing like career-long research on this. Like today's presentation is definitely just the wave tops. But yeah, we can move to any questions.
Absolutely. Can't emphasize that enough. All right, so we got a question back when you were presenting on recruitment and mobilization. And I'll just scroll back up to those slides. I shrink this. And it was in mobilization. We were talking about this, and the goal being to prevent burnout and disenchantment with collective action. And the question wanted us to dig more into how to prevent burnout. So I'm going to let you jump us off there, because, well, before you jump off, all the things that Shireen talked about, all of these helps prevent burnout. But
absolutely,
I think they're asking for like a more detailed, itemized like examples.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of ways. I think for some folks, like burnout becomes inevitable because so much of their stock in the work is comes from a strong like personal identification with the work, and people take on their day jobs working in social change, and then X many volunteer positions, and so I really strongly caution against that. Earlier in my career, I at one time had, I think, 4 different volunteer positions on top of my day job working in repro in my case. And it was just not sustainable. It was getting me to the point where I thought like every hour, every 15-minute span that I wasn't doing stuff to help others through my repro work was feeling like wasted time, even when it was time that I was devoting to moving my life forward, doing the dishes and junk like that. So you really have to take stock of like how much you or your group is personally identifying with like organizer as value and organizer as like personal identity. Obviously, we bring all of our many identities and intersections into our work, but it's a matter of not over-identifying with your role and your job and your utility to movement work as like the thing that is bringing you the most value and the thing that you have to be doing in your life above all other things. I think this is like particularly difficult for folks in repro because our movement is so sustained by volunteer labor, more so than some other movements where you'll find obviously people do volunteer roles for various other social change projects, but in repro, it's like our medical access is coordinated by volunteers, whether it's abortion funders, or clinic escorts, or sometimes even providers are, working in volunteer or pro bono spaces, are legal protection, our security, like every place that you could plug into repro work is very largely buttressed by volunteer labor. And so that gives folks a lot of places to plug in, which is great, but it also gives people a lot of leeway to, burn the candle at, 17 different ends. And if you see it in yourself, obviously it's harder to, fight against, because we view ourselves as exceptions in a lot of ways. But this is where building that community makes a huge difference, because you can usually see it in others. You can see when they're kind of leading down a path that could get to burnout, or when they're already circling the drain. And that's where the accountability towards your group or towards your volunteer recruits becomes so important. And that's why building those relationships along with and outside the work is so important. Because if your relationship with someone is only in giving them tasks, and then you all of a sudden tell them, hey, don't do this anymore, that's not going to come off well. They're going to view it as like a lack of confidence in their work, and that might even make it worse for them in their path away from burnout. So really investing in those person-to-person relationships is for me the most important barrier to burnout.
Yeah, and I agree with that. So when I think about preventing burnout and disenchantment with collective action, at the core of this is being realistic about goals and about the time span it'll take. So I guess thinking about movement work in a broader sense, right? Like if when you are recruiting people and when you are firing them up to go out and do this work, be honest with them, right? Because when I first started, I came in with the naivete, like, why aren't these problems solved? But what is going on? The generation before me has screwed everything up. Y'all made it harder than it had to be. Now we got to come in here and fix this. And honestly, I definitely did not have a firm grip on just how powerful the systems of domination were, how pervasive they were in every structure in society, including our social structures. Like I just did not have as firm a grip on that as I should have. But as I learned just how systems of domination adapt and how they have adapted and how they give us crumbs and pieces to keep us at bay and to keep us in line, and how humans work, like how most of us are conformists. Like everybody doesn't have the fire that I have in me to resist, to rebel, to be revolutionaries. It is just most humans just want to get by. They just want the path of least resistance, right? And in considering that, right, and knowing that the work is ongoing and that it's never ending, to get outside of that Western European thinking where we think that there's going to be a point where racism is eradicated, where sexism is eradicated, and we don't get there. It is a great idea to have, and yes, we should be dismantling these systems and getting people to re-articulate these ideas and how they associate with identities that may be harmful, or like their, I'm going to just say, hate of other people, their prejudices, their discriminatory behaviors. Like as we work on all of that, just knowing that there is no point where we get rid of all of them unless we kill a lot of people. A lot of people would have to die for that to happen. And then what does humanity look like? Because our most powerful asset is our diversity. So we don't want to dismantle the systems and do it in such a way where we harm a lot of people in the process. And so preventing burnout is like keeping people realistic, keeping people in the know of like the processes, being transparent in those processes, the decision-making processes, not only within your organization, but at every level. Like how did, as the executive director or as a supervisor, how did you make this decision, right? And you may, get in that trend sometimes where you're overloaded with work and you just think, I don't have time to be explaining all this stuff. Like I'm the boss, explain those things because we're training leaders for tomorrow. I don't always want the people who work under me right now to be working under me. If you don't become a leader and like hopefully surpass me, I'm not doing my job, right? In forming the leaders, recruiting leaders and getting them to be better, right? Then and be equipped with more things than I came in equipped with. So that's my take on that. You want to add anything else, Shireen?
No, I think you hit it all.
All right, cool. So we're gonna wrap this up early because we have no more questions. If you do have a question, do it now. Submit it now. I like getting out early. I'm not gonna drag this out and make you stay here for a whole hour if I don't need to. Yeah, if hold on 1 second, y'all. My mouse is disappearing or not working. Okay, here we go. It's working. All right. So once again, I want to thank everybody who attended for attending. Appreciate y'all so much. And oh, wait, one more question. Okay, questions are coming in now. Hold on. All right, so there's a question about personal one-on-one sessions. How do we get signed up for that? Amy, I don't really know what you heard. So, I didn't say anything about a personal one-on-one session, but I'm probably thinking you're meaning when I was talking about relationship building and having one-on-ones, or Shireen also mentioned this, and having one-on-ones with people in your community to build relationships with them, right? And so I see you got it. Great. And then so like Amy, like you and I, since you like we could do that. Like have a one-on-one and chat about like what are you up to? What are you up to? How can I support you? How can I support you? Like that would be a good thing to do. It doesn't have to be in person, it can be virtual. So when you think about it, too, you don't have to limit yourself to the people who physically live where you live. We're in a digital age. You could reach out to them however you reach out and connect, and then like set up a Zoom, set up a video call or an audio call and chat for a bit at a time, 30 minutes, an hour, and see what y'all can come up with. So what would you advise for people who are just starting and are seeking a way to connect themselves to people who are already doing the work? Shireen, you want to get that one? Start us off?
Can you repeat that one?
Yeah.
So it cut off and I don't see it on my window.
What would you advise for people who are just starting, who are seeking a way to connect themselves to people who are already doing the work?
Oh, already. Okay. I think it definitely depends on the issue area you're trying to work in. I think like for better or worse, Repro has a lot of super active engagement in social media spaces, particularly Twitter. Again, there's definite drawbacks to that, but that's a really good way to like find your niche in an issue area and also start connecting the dots to folks who are more like geographically close to you. Obviously, there's a lot of organizing and engagement around abortion funds, which exist in every state, but some of those have a more active organizing presence than others. So I really do think that like maybe you can start playing with your abortion fund if you're looking to work in Repro. Otherwise, like really, I know it sounds so silly to send people to social media spaces first, but I do think especially post the onset of the COVID pandemic, a lot more initial recruitment, and a lot more sustaining of movement is happening online. And in a lot of ways, that's good. In a lot of ways, it's opening up accessibility for people who can't necessarily meet in person, whether that is because of ability reasons or caregiving responsibilities or what. So I would say first look and see if there is a buzz of folks online near where you live, and then I would also say to plug into local groups that might not be directly associated with your issue area, but where you can find the through lines and who you can pull from those existing groups to work towards the mission you're trying to get plugged in on.
Yeah, definitely if you're just starting out, there's so many issues. I know that we're reproductive justice, so we're really focused on that right here, but like, I want to work on all the issues. And I do in some ways, but I have to really, really be honest about my capacity. And so I might care about an issue, but I can't physically work on it. Just given my capacity, I'll donate. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. You'd be surprised. Like if we all like donated to organizations or gave some mutual aid funds, seriously, we could take care of each other in ways that we never imagined before. And so I definitely prioritize issues. And it can sound bad because it's like, oh man, does that mean I care about abortion more than I care about unhoused people? Like, no, it doesn't. It just like when we were talking about maximizing your talents, like where are my talents? What am I educated in? What am I what can I speak to the most? Like where can my contributions really count? And I feel like Repro is where my contributions can really count and count the most. And I trust that there are people doing the movement work in other areas that are smart and talented and capable people. So I no longer feel like I have to insert myself in every space, basically, right? So it's like, what capacity am I going to do it? Maybe instead of showing up to every event or every action or every meeting, I work on recruiting volunteers for an organization, or I fundraise for an organization, or I donate to that organization, right? So it's like different levels that you can be involved in. Yeah, so when you're thinking about you're just getting started, ask people who know people. Like, who do you know? Who in our community is working on this? They'll be like, oh, so and so might know. And then you go reach out to that person, and eventually you'll find them. Like, people in the communities know who's in the community doing stuff, and they can lead you to other leaders who are doing things and connect you with other people. Online is good too. You heard an organization. Start out with that. Like Shireen said, a lot of repro work, if you're thinking about repro specifically, is volunteer based. So volunteers 100% everywhere, all the time. So yeah. All right. So thank y'all for showing up, expressing gratitude in the chat. I appreciate all of you. And go sign up for the other two trainings. There's going to be me in both of them with different co-presenters. And the next one, we're going to talk about organizing direct actions. And so you can go sign up for that. It's in 2 weeks, Thursday, 11 o'clock, and Central Time, 12 o'clock Eastern. And the last one is about like, once the action's over, what then? What are some things you want to be thinking about in that sense? So if you want to know about organizing direct actions, the next one coming up is for you. So Shireen and I thank you, and we're going to go ahead and let y'all get the rest of your day back. So 6 minutes, right back to you. All right. Bye, y'all.
Thanks so much, all.